When creating mnemonics for learning foreign language vocabulary, there are two primary paths you can take. In general, you can either use the spelling or the sound as the basis for the mnemonic. Which one you choose will depend on the language and your goals. If you're learning a language like French, where there are multiple letter combinations that all get pronounced the same way, it's often best to use the spelling, especially when getting started. In French, you can tell the pronunciation from the spelling, but not necessarily the spelling from the pronunciation. For example, you might use an image of the United Nations to remember the number 1. Un. The letter combination UN can be pronounced the same as IN or even EN in French, so using the United Nations as a mnemonic helps us remember the spelling of this word, from which we can also get the sound. For more advanced learners familiar with the system of French pronunciation and spelling, it doesn't make as much of a difference, and you can use either spelling or sound. If you're learning a language where there is more or less a one-to-one connection between spelling and sound, it also doesn't really matter. In other words, for languages that are spelled the way they sound, you can use either spelling or sound as the basis for your mnemonics. Italian is a language that is spelled the way it sounds. Take the Italian word lampone, which means raspberry. You could use an image of a lamp to remember this word. Lamp and lampone are similar in both spelling and sound. So far, these two examples have looked at remembering how to produce the word itself in the foreign language. What about remembering the meaning? There are a couple ways of doing this too. The first is to create two separate images and mush them together. For example, you might think of a lamp in the shape of a raspberry, casting a red light everywhere. The second option is to use an image to remember the word itself, and then narrative to add the meaning. Perhaps you think about going raspberry picking at night by the light of a lamp. Lampone. Regardless of which method you choose, try to engage as many senses as possible. Imagine the red light of the raspberry lamp, or the taste of a raspberry plucked fresh from a bush on a warm summer night, harvested by lamplight. Finally, it's important to remember that mnemonics on their own are limited. After a certain number of mnemonics, it becomes difficult to keep track of them all. That's where having a space to organize them becomes really important. You can also use the organization of space to help you remember the meaning of words. Let's say you use a memory structure like the Mnemonics to learn to count in French. An image of the UN can go in the first spot. You then know that it is the number 1 because it is on the first spot. Or you can imagine the lamp of lampone in a room with other fruits in Italian. If you have a room specifically for storing fruit names, you might not remember that lampone means raspberry, but you will at least know it is a type of fruit based on its location in your memory palace. To close, let's look at a few examples of mnemonics for words in different languages. Mouton in French means sheep. We can think of a guy with mutton chops that are actually made of sheepskin. Foss in Icelandic means waterfall. We can think of waterfalls coming from a giant faucet. The Arabic word kelb means dog, so we can think of kelp being turned into dog food. This works well because there's actually no P sound separate from the B sound in Arabic. When the word is similar to the English, you can create a mnemonic that helps you remember the difference in pronunciation. For example, the name of the month December in Russian is Dekabr. We can think of a deck of cards and playing card games warm by the fire during the cold of December. The German word entschuldigen means to excuse. We can think of an ant with broad shoulders trying to get through a crowd, but constantly bumping into people and things because his shoulders are so wide. Being polite, the ant keeps saying, entschuldigen Sie, excuse me. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and check out Linguisticator.com for our courses in memory and languages. Also check out the description below for information on Monks VR, our software for building memory palaces in 3D and virtual reality.